Risale, what is he really doing from the very beginning? So I think it really gives very interesting guidance in terms of how we should approach to the non-believers. Because this part is basically referring to the misbelief of individuals, right? And the way that the topic is discussed here, it is very intentional, wise, and effective way to really communicate with people of other, of no faith or other faith. So therefore, I kind of think that there is really good lessons in terms of the methodology of how to approach the other individual from this treatise as well. Did you notice anything? What do you think when you look at it? Is there anything of this?
For example, my attention, he didn't start with the fourth possibility, Bismillah, Allah. He started with the other three possible ways. So I think in order to falsify a claim, first you need to take it as it is, then falsify it, right? Otherwise, but at the beginning, if you don't think if you deny it immediately, you cannot falsify that. That's what I'm taking from here. First, take it, read it, and assume that, let's say it is true. So then you start falsifying it. It's not really working.
We assume that it's true.
From here, I see that
You consider what it is.
let's say assume.
Or what I guess you have to understand what it entails, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you assume this would mean that
Let's say that
it's possible.
you claim that causes create this, right? Let's take this, and he is then looking at the creation, and he is falsifying this claim by using creation as evidence.
So
He doesn't deny it from the beginning.
and it's not like, again, I think that's what I took it as well. It's like the kalimat tawheed, la ilaha illallah. So it starts first with la ilaha. So la ilaha in the sense that you really look at what is the claim there, and the claim is, though there are certain things here, and what are the options? So he mentioned 4 possibilities for those things to exist, and the very first thing that he says, okay, let's discuss those 3 options that see whether they can be plausible explanation for the reality that we're observing. So therefore, it's basically starting with this one first, and in a sense that this is quite different than the common approach among believers. That rather than go and tell your truth to people and start to say, oh, here is what we believe in God, and here's God. So he's not starting with that. He's talking about what non-believers will believe as, plausible explanation for this, physical reality. So in a sense that he's not imposing his views on them. It's like, this is my truth, and here is the Quran, what it says, and therefore we need to really acknowledge this. And it doesn't start with that one. It first look, okay, what are your options? Let's start with your options and go through them, and he will explain how many 3 examples, I think. So he's not like he's very, can go and try to explain deeply that how this cannot be plausible option for the observed phenomena. And he will talk about, look at the beings, and particularly the living being. And since you cannot deny the existence of this one, the question is, how did they come into existence? So it's a very reasonable question to ask. In this case, then what are the options we have? Let's start to discuss each one of those. So, but the interesting part, he will not start with the options that he believes in it, that is, that God made them. So he will start with the options that the others believe in that. So he will, provide the argument, a very compelling argument, to show that those are really not viable options. And after that, it's also interesting. It's not saying just because those are wrong, that the 4th one is automatically right. He doesn't go this way. He doesn't say you will falsify those and therefore now you have no options. He will say if we don't have options, then obviously the fourth option must be the true one if there's no other options. But you can argue there could be other options. Maybe we don't know right now. So therefore, he's not staying there and saying that you falsified three options, and now the options that God made it is true. It has to be true. No, he will provide very compelling argument that why it must be God and God alone that's really creating what you observe. That's again his approach. That is also how he explained, because it's not just it must be God. How do you know? It must be one God, because he's talking about one creator. And how do you know that this one creator is the creator of everything that you observe? I think that he gives very interesting argument on this as well. So that it's really important to look at this way. And also when I look at it, when I look at the options, so what are the three things that he falsified?
Well, first of all, the question is what created what we see around us is created.
Mm-hmm.
And the options he's looking at are that the causes may have created them, that they created themselves, or nature created them. And as a fourth option, we will look into God created.
Good. Now, I thought, what is the chance?
What's that?
Where is the chance here? Because normally, if you go and ask people, I don't know, I used to think that when people ask me, what are the options? One option I will give you, I will say chance. It happened by chance. But it actually doesn't mention here among the three options, it doesn't mention chance at all.
But to start with that, logically there are no other options. Three options exist.
Correct.
Yeah, not only I mean that they not have only the chance, or anyone can tell other a lot of maybe possibilities. But these three contains a lot of different small differences, possibilities inside them, and also there might be other possibilities, but these three are the logical possibilities. I think there is a sentence about it. There is no way logically except these three ways.
Good.
I think it's just started from the first.
From the very beginning, from the introduction.
Yeah, there is no way except. And other ones, something like the chain, maybe we can put inside it, for example, causes inside it, or the.
I think that's the key point. The key point is that most of the time, personally, I used to think that chance is a standalone, separate option. But then I realized that no, chance is not a separate option actually. Chance is with the causes. So when he talks about cause create this, he's talking about the cause through a chain of the cause by chance. That this cause this cause this, and by chance we get what we get it now. So the chance actually is integrated factors within causes mostly. So therefore, it's not a standalone separate items that it happened by chance. It's happened through the causation by chance. So therefore, that's one thing. But did you see that one thing I was trying to be really curious at? What is the difference between the second and third one? And when I read it, to me there was a lot of overlapping. When he will say, because I think the causes, the first one is relatively easy. That what he means by cause create this is basically this deterministic causal relationship that we get the Big Bang, and with the Big Bang all this particles, subatomic particles, and came up out of the Big Bang, and then they cause certain interaction and reactions, and then they come together eventually randomly form those elements and everything over time. That's really the story that was said. So that's kind of causation. But the second and third one, did you really try to see what is the difference between the two? And because when I read it, I had difficulty to really separate them, to see, how can you, separate the second argument, which is expose itself, and the third argument, which is nature is causing them.
And nature, I think there are a lot of differences maybe to second way and third way, but the major point, second way, it forms itself. Not there is nothing affect them from outside of them. But the third way, they thought that they think that there are laws, for example, law of nation, laws around the universe, and these laws order or the build or create the things. But in the second way, yani it told that they forms themselves.
But when you look at this forming themselves, don't you think that he's talking about the nature of being producing a certain outcome, which basically still isn't still nature?
Yeah, but yeah, like that. For example, my body has the small particles. These particles come together and they make
But how?
behavior and
How?
yeah.
Because of their nature.
But
Because of their nature.
yani the word nature is the same, but the thought, yani meaning inside the nature, yani the meaning inside the word of nature is different in second way and third way.
So that's the key. I think one of the very important points would be what is the difference between the second and third way. But I was thinking that why even, since this talks about three different possibility, but if you look at the name of treatise, it's called on nature, right? So but in reality it doesn't talk about nature alone. But the title is nature. And actually my understanding that this is because the second and third are both related to nature. But the second impossibility is about the nature of each individual particles, that you say it's the nature of seed to grow to become a tree. So this is what you mean that the seed has certain properties, and these properties lets the seeds to really grow up and to become a tree. So in that case, still is a naturalistic view, but therefore but this idea is that there is a given nature, somehow gain nature, whatever it is, and this nature is really making these things to be different and to produce certain effect and results. So this is the second way. The third way, he's talking more about nature as a governing laws from the outside. That's there are certain laws of nature, and those laws of nature is actually imposing certain outcome. So this is the third way. He's talking about nature. He's talking more about the laws, the governing laws that is really controlling or shaping everything. While the second one is talking about the properties or the nature of each, let's say, particles, will be the cells or the molecules or atoms, whatever you say. So he's talking, and he's rejecting all. And in the second one, rejecting this nature of the property, in the sense that if you say it is seed, and the seed has this property, and you plant the seed and give water, because of the nature of the seed, you become a tree, you say, oh, what does it mean? Look at that. The seed is nothing but, let's say, 4 molecules. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. And look, what is these molecules? The molecules is basically against the arrangement of certain, atoms. So what is atoms? So he will go to the breakdown and will tell you that in reality, the only difference is the number of atoms or electrons inside of those. So just because the number is more or less, will never be a good reason to give such property to this, what you call a seed. So he doesn't like this concept of kind of creating this magical term, seed, is egg, or it is a seed, or it is sperm, or whatever. You say, look at go to the deep and see what you're naming to think that this is a certain, certain object with certain property can result in certain thing. He will say, go down and look at it. And I really like this argument. Will say, because this is sometimes what happens. Let's say when it talks about the brain, they will say, the neurons, the brain cells, is a special type of cells, and an amazing. Here is its structure and shape, and the neuron acts and does this and this. Then the neuron will say, do you mean that those neurons are more intelligent than you? Do you mean that they are more intelligent than scientists? Because what they do is much amazing, and even scientists try to figure out what they do. So his argument that no, this cannot be their work. It's not they are doing, it is not their work. So in this case, he is basically, and when we look at the second impossibility, in my views, this is exactly what the modern science is doing right now. A whole educational system is based on mostly those 3 impossibilities. But they are not doing in this clear way. is embedded into the knowledge. And anyone who go and get the science or this secular education, they get this exactly those three ways, and their mind is shaped by this way, and they start to think. Because I was really, really curious when he says, even I don't know how they translate it in Turkish one. If you look at the very first, the second impossibility, he says it's formed in itself, it comes into existence, and later ceases to exist. I think it's in Turkish one. If you remember, what was the Turkish for the second impossibility? But no, that's two other words. No, then kendine teşekkür ederim. Oluyor, bitiyor. Look, oluyor, bitiyor. It doesn't. The word even doesn't exist in the English one here. But actually, oluyor, bitiyor is exactly the word people use to describe. Like when you say, oh, let's say you go and you see the tree, you say, this tree now it becomes really big. Last year it was very small. Or look, the small seed now become very, very big and give you this. Now, if you use the same phrase for a building, everyone will laugh at you. Let's say you see a building, you say, oh, this building was very small last year. Now it really become very big. It's a giant building. It become a giant building. And in Turkish, if you say, like when you say, bu bina büyümüş, kocaman olmuş. They say, are you crazy? How it can happen by itself? Nothing can grow this way. So when he used the words of oluyor, bitiyor, this is exactly the word that people use in their daily life. They don't even know it reflects this mentality and this way of really observing God's works in the universe. But it just becomes a regular, ordinary expression to really do that. And everyone sees it's normal. But if you say, okay, if it's normal, let's apply it to the man-made objects, then everyone will realize this is a very weird expression. You cannot use this one for a building. You cannot use this one for a car. You cannot use this one for any man-made object. It clearly becomes obvious nonsense. But you can use this very clear, and all believers even use this one when they describe what is happening in their garden, what is happening with their trees, the food, what happened to their kids. Their description is exactly goes like the second impossibility. So, and therefore, when Nursi says that there are certain words that implies shirk, and even believers using, subconsciously or I don't know, without knowing what they are saying. So, and then he referred this kind of expression because become part of our daily language. But in reality, this language is a secular language. It's a language that really implies something else and give wrong impression. So therefore, I think it's very interesting to really look at those, try to see how it's related. How this is related to our daily life and daily thinking and the work that we do. So therefore, when I look at it, I think it's amazing that the way that's really he puts it, the way that he explained this one, and how it's describing what is going on. It's very, very interesting.
And that's very important. This is why we read this. Even though we don't believe those, we read it to change our perspective on looking the creation. Otherwise, we don't think that it implies something else when we say it's just growing. It's not growing by itself. We have to remember that. It's not. It is not only trying to explain it to the non-believers. Even we believers need to understand, need to have a better perspective on creation. That's, why. Sometimes some Muslims think that, we don't need this. We already say La ilaha illallah. We say La ilaha illallah, but sometimes we don't look at the world through the perspective of La ilaha illallah. Sometimes you forget it.
I find something interesting that Bediüzzaman follows a very precise pedagogical method in articulating the knowledge that he has. When he talks about issues that are within Islam, that belong to debates within Islam, that a believer needs to think about, but not a non-believer needs to think about, what the believer needs to think about, he does not reference what he thinks is the false point of the subject. Like if you think of the treatise on Qadar, for instance, the divine determining, it's, I mean, if one were to take that a few pages of text and write an explanation, exposition on it, in relating it to the larger literature on this issue in the tradition of Islam, it would be a huge book. But it's only a few pages because he does not reference what he thinks is the false point or what he thinks is not the point that's in accordance with Ahl Sunnah. Right? Because that's what in Islam, a believer, it's the right, it defines the right position for the believer, and there is no need to confuse the mind with what is wrong. Right? But when it comes to issues that are not debates within Islam, but rather a debate between the Satan and the spirit, or the nafs and the person himself, there is no way those debates, those questions, confusing questions will not come up. It's going to come up for everybody, believer or non-believer. It comes up for the non-believer, it comes up for the believer on certain occasions, because Satan wants to keep bothering you, the nafs wants to keep bothering you. Right? Therefore, in those cases, there is no benefit in avoiding the question of what might be confusing. What might be confusing has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed in a persuasive way. So this is one of those cases. Another case that comes to my mind is when his debate with the Satan about whether the Quran belongs to the can be the word of a human being or not, and things like that. These are issues in which Satan will try to come to you, and the answers are prepared, ready to be given to you. Another thing that we thought, what I remember we thought was interesting as we were reading this treatise is the first, second, and the third, the causes itself and nature, are not necessarily things as such that one can define and detail and so on and so forth. They are rather human constructs that people who do not believe or who do not want to believe are using to reference a phenomenon that they see is in existence, but they don't want to relate it to God. Right? Otherwise, there is no such thing as nature. There is no such thing as itself. There is no such thing as causes. But we observe that there is, like as he says at the beginning, there is existence. We cannot reject the existence of the existence, right? And there is artfulness and wisdom in the existence. Things are serving each other. Things are matching each other. There seems to be a purpose. If there's purpose, there's wisdom, and so on and so forth. That's also a fact. That also we are observing. And then this is not just a stagnant picture, but it's constantly in action and motion and renewing, and right. So there is a force that we observe that makes this move come into existence and then change from state to state and influence one another. There is a force that we are observing, and that's also a fact that nobody denies. Then the next question is, what is it? Right? And then it's either a creator who has consciousness, and that we feel we need to then ask the question of, so what does he want from me? Or it is something else without consciousness, and therefore we can just forget about and live our lives. And the second option, these are the categories that people have over time historically and in philosophy thinking and so on and so forth have developed and tried to figure out names, constructs to name that force that we think is God and coming from God, and they have tried to figure out these things. So he's at a very foundational level debating with the archetypal nafs, archetypal compulsive soul, from which all these questions and alternatives, excuses are coming in order for us, in order to give the nafs a way to avoid living God.
Yeah. And I intended to speak a lot, but I cannot stay. Even that my language is not good. Sorry about it. But the issue is very important, and I like to say something about this. If you are speaking with someone, especially in debate, if he has something to say to you, and if he thinks that or thought that this is very strong, and if he thinks that my idea is very strong, and in that situation, if you start to explain your own idea, he never listen to you. What you first to do, you have to first to destroy his idea. If he can show immediately in a short way that your idea is not strongful, he shifts and start to listen to you. Otherwise, like full glass, he cannot put something on it. He just wait at the finishing your words. He just waiting, not listen, not taking anything, any small things. Yani, since in 80s, in our university age, atheism were very popular, and then since we were in dormitory, each night we were in debate. And I saw that first we have to shake that person about their idea, and you have to find out that what is his idea about that, and from where he got strength. If he can cut that point, then it's easy to put something. In that Tabiat Risale, Ustaz heard, because then in that age, people thought that because their atheism coming from the sciences, and the rationalism, naturalism, they thought that we are very powerful about it, all sciences is given strength to us, blah, blah, blah things. Then if you start to say about the creation, Allah, something, you cannot put anything in his mind. First, you have to shake him that your idea is very poor, meaningless, not unlogical.
No,
Then,
you don't have any proof.
any proof, any strength, then he feels himself that, okay, what are your opinion then? This is the first one. La ilaha, it is also a method of Quran. La ilaha first. La ilaha, there is no God. Then, but Allah.
So in this case, when you really, that's a very good point. So you try to really start with the argument for the other individual to listen.
Yeah.
And then, but I think when you try to listen, that you try to be careful that you're not imposing and necessarily saying that, this is what you say. Let's think together.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's try to see what you say makes sense or not. Because after all, we are rational being, and we try to really find out what is right, what is wrong.
Yeah.
So if this is the options that you offer, let's think together whether it makes sense or not. I think it's the issue, like let's say when you start on the first, impossible to hear the first way as well.
Sorry, but can I add something? Because I forgot. I think that hardly collected a few sentences. And also, while I speaking with that guys, you know that they had a lot of questions about creation. But I saw that there are category about the question according to their subject. What I mean that I saw that biological person, who interested in biology and something else, their questions is coming from the first way, causes. Then when I read them first word, I can solve their problem. I think because they poison from science of the biology that something affect that one, this affect that one, that affect that one, Because they learn from books that everything cause something. DNA affect the RNA and that transforms something to else and the cell of the blah, blah, blah things. Then the majority of classic question can be answered by the first way. But the people who are engaged with the physics from the third way. Because they always affected all the law of nations controls the universe. There are a lot of laws, there are a lot of things, because there is a law there. Why disorder? Because there is this law there. You know that the main points they get, or the negative point of their mind coming from the laws. powerful things that then we can, if we can read with them, we can solve their problem with the third way. And this is there are very mean gap among these three ways. And there's some philosophical or others sometimes, or the very artificial ones or the surface and looking from the appearance only, not the deeper ones, is the second one. Then we can easily solve the second ways or problem. Yani, actually, the name of Risale is Tabiat. Yani, it means that the three ways also the part of Tabiat. But there are very big differences among these three ways. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
No. So I think really when I read this one, I don't know how to really tell the others, but I think by the Nusi here is saving the fate of entire humanity. I really think that particularly with enlightenment, when you really read Nietzsche when he said God is dead, for secular mind, it's really hard to have confidence and certainty in the belief of God. That's really, the concept doesn't exist anymore among majority of even believers because they all have a doubt. And I think when you read Lucy, when you read this part particularly, if you truly understand, you can go out with 100% confidence to the level that you can actually express your certainty about the existence of God even much higher than your certainty about your own existence. That is some things I don't really think that anyone around the world can understand. There could be such level of belief in God. It's not that really God is something unknown and this is we believe and we can. No, it becomes actually obvious than the sun itself. Then, as it is impossible to deny the existence of sun unless you close your eyes or you're blinded, that it's not possible to really deny the existence of God once you really go deep into this logical arguments in Nusi, and you are somehow, if you are really willing to listen and embrace this idea. So therefore, I think that it is extremely powerful. I say it's like this is a guy that with those writing, he's really helping the entire humanity, saving their fate. Otherwise, it is almost impossible to stay against this doubt that comes through the science and philosophy since the Enlightenment. And therefore, when let's say people of other faith, Christian and Jews, they see, let's say we are not just really an ignorant person and blindly believe, and we are well educated and we read thousands of books and we read different views as well. We still feel strong faith in God. They cannot really understand how this can be possible. And I think that's basically, shows the strength of the argument of that. But my point is that how can we get this message out? Because I believe that people really are looking for some evidence like this. They really want to know whether still you can reach such certainty, indeed God exists. And I really think that the reason they don't believe, because they don't have strong evidence, they have a lot of doubt coming through, every way, particularly from science and philosophy. So my point is that how can we try to really get these arguments here in, let's say, treaties of nature, and try to make it accessible to everyone. Like, I give you one example, the very first impossibility. Now I give an example of pharmacy and with the jars, and then how the winds, so this is explaining how causality cannot be, through the chance cannot produce the outcome. You'll say, look here, imagine you enter a pharmacy in an old time, and still, I think in US it is the case, you can go, they can mix those ingredients and give you the medicine. You enter a pharmacy and you find 50 different type of jars full of different ingredients. And you have a medicine that's made of this 50 different ingredients, but with a very measured component. Now he says that, would you accept the idea that somehow a strong wind come and push all these jars down, and they come together in a precise measure and make a medicine? The problem particularly gives medicine because the measure is essential. If you put little or more or less from one, it is become ineffective or it becomes poisonous. You can kill it. So he says, no one logically can ever accept such idea. Now then he will say, oh, look here, a living being, a plant, is nothing but just basically composed from many different, let's say, ingredients. So, and these ingredients are very arranged or made in very delicate way. So how come this can come together and build this one? Now when I thought, I said, okay, this is good, but now in modern time, first of all, most of pharmacists don't do this, right? Okay, if you tell this one, they really don't understand it because you go there is medicines, there you get it, okay? So the example here is not really accessible to individual in modern time, okay? Now, how can I explain to them? I said, okay, how about if I do this? Would that be good? I said, okay, now think about a smart device like your smartphone, like your iPhone. And things that you go to the factory of producing iPhone. First you go there, you see this product, you see with your eyes, and then you say, I'm just curious how you get this iPhone. They take you to the place with all the raw material. They show you all the raw material, very raw material, that's used to really make iPhone. Now imagine you have this, of course, if you look at all those ingredients, you will have hundreds of different ingredients. Now if they tell you, if anyone tells you that, something wind come randomly and push these ingredients and we get iPhone, you will never believe in that. You will never accept it. Now any plants or any living object or even non-living objects, it is thousands or million times much more complex than any smart device. If you cannot logically accept that iPhone can be composed randomly by these ingredients through any force, even wind, let's say, it wasn't one day wind, but 1,000 years. It's 1,000,000 years. The wind just stick these ingredients around and give you the iPhone. I don't think any reasonable person will accept that. And now industry will say, okay, now if this is not acceptable logically, then how can you accept not one, not two, infinite number of objects that compose from certain ingredients in a more elegant way? So in that case, to me so we need to somehow understand the core of his argument because he followed very logical, structural way to really make his case. And once we get the methodology, I think it's a job for us to update those examples in the sense that to really say how we can, when we say shah, it basically means, and I think we should clearly give assignments to his readers. He says that this is your duty, that once you read this one, what you can do in the future. So give more example, try to update it, try to really make it more accessible to the individual. And I think this is our job in the sense that to understand first what is his argument, what is his logical framework, and how we can get this framework and apply it to the different cases which is more accessible and easily understood by the kids and the generation of our age. That's really, when I was reading, I said, okay, how can we get it the same thing from every example, every impossibility he explained here? If we can get it the structure and can somehow apply to more modern examples, I thought that it could be much more effective and relevant. Because to me that, when we read, maybe for us it is fine that we benefited, but I think to make it more accessible to individuals of our modern time, we need to really, find examples that's more, interesting to them. Otherwise, again, when I read it, I don't know, how many people will really get this medicine or pharmacy example because they don't see that one right now in modern time. So that's why I thought that it's our job when we really try to think how we can further expand and further apply to some modern life examples.
But I think there's some medicine they still
do that?
Yeah,
here they do. In Turkey, I don't think they do ever.
Yeah.
But here, I saw it.
They cannot also imagine or understand it. And as you told that the Bediüzzaman is giving here to us a formula.
Exactly.
And also giving an example about how we can use this formula or apply this formula to do everything around us. That if we can understand that formula very well, then we can apply wherever we can see or we can consider it. Let me give a small example about the importance of this small the pharmacy example here. in also at the university time, they know Nuri, that the classmate, sons also, we were together, that our lecturer were the atheist or the secular people. Then during the lesson about the science history, science history, then they tried to give something about the divine existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he immediately gave this example very briefly, very shortly about imagine that the pharmacy, then the like blah blah things. But before giving example, our lecturer was very proud about that in this age. No need to talking about that the Allah blah blah things that you are the science people, so you will be very big high science, give up these things, blah blah things. But after giving this example very shortly, that the Nureddin with us and the third class student, he became silent. And what he told that 20 years ago, a person from the medical and medical sciences gave his example to me. Let's start the lesson. Finish that one, start the lesson. During 20 years, he couldn't forget it. And he couldn't find an answer to this example, and he couldn't give anything, any reply to it. He finished the subject, start to listen his lesson again. Then I feel that how powerful these formula, these example, and these things. But what is the important? Again, that's rather to the topic about the giving seminar about the nature power effect, and he gave all the department about it. Then he applied this formula to a lot of examples. Not only for us, like we told that from our subject, our sciences, physics, or the other things, or nuclear other things. Then after applying this formula from the third ages especially, then we saw that he cannot tell even that the big professors or other things and scholars and philosophers, they cannot tell anything about it. But what we need, we have to get this formula very well to apply it, and then we can apply everywhere. What subject it is? For example, that lecturer is talking about anything else about the voltage orientation about the atoms. And if he's talking about that electrons arrange these ones, we can apply directly this formula to that ones. Is there any ilm or any akıl or anything else about that electron or any hikmah, any business, blah blah things? From this point, we can apply it. But as you showed yesterday, that if we can get that 7 layer about all these topics, then we can show. I think there is a set about that. Her yerden suyu çıkarmaya ilgili olanlar. If people can, the method of getting water from everywhere, he can do it. But if you try to get somewhere else from behind the mountains, it is hard to get the water from that one because they can cutting or the other things can cancel it. Therefore, we have to learn how we get water from everywhere. This is also methodology of solving this problem, I think. We have to get the methodology first.
How we reach to knowledge of the existence of God and the power of God and knowledge, so the attributes and impact of God on things from anything.
From anything,
yes. I think therefore that's very essential that we really look at it. His methodology first. He will point to the objects or the phenomena. Okay, we start with the phenomena, whatever it is. Let's say this is a flower, butterfly, whatever. Then you will say the phenomena that you observe seems like artful. You point to the art in that one, and it seems like it is purposeful. It's serves certain purpose and function. And then you will say there's something like this that means that it has been arranged in a special way. Then you will say there has to be, the arrangement has to come from a certain action. So he points to the field after that, the actions directly. Now, what action you need to take it to make this phenomena happen, because it seems like it's composed from certain things to take a particular form. So he says that requires an action. Now, from the actions, then there might be actors who actually act to take this action and bring this one. But then from that he said, what this actor must have it to really have such actions. So he talks about the adjectives, the necessary adjectives. Okay, this act, can this act be from a monkey, or from a donkey, or from a bird, or from a dummy person, or from intelligent but uneducated person? Now you will tell me what are the necessary requirements and adjective of the person. So then you can, from that you say, okay, there must be this, and that's how it's basically this object come into existence. And I think that when we look at it, it's very important that we try to follow the same way that, you start, this is what I think his way is really what they call natural theology. So in the sense that you look at something in nature and you just do the reasoning from what you observe, because his argument, if you cannot deny the existence of this one, that's very starting point. Now, if you deny that, there's no point to discuss with you as well, because that means you don't exist as well. Because if you accept the existence of something, whatever it is, now we try to understand how this came into existence. If you say nothing exists, including me, then we don't need to even discuss with you because you don't exist, right? Because that's his point. Now, if you accept the existence from the beginning, then now we try to say, okay, this requires certain actions here. Then the field must have to have five, that the actors behind that. But the actor must have a particular adjectives or qualification attributes to make that one. So this is how he will take you there and try to really tell you who is or what is behind this observed phenomenon. I think here, and in this part as well, he's not telling you that this is there must be God and he is the creator of this one. It's actually taking you from the very initial steps up, and then we'll show you that it must be, because there's no other way other than, let's say, someone with infinite power to do that. So like with this particular, like when I look at it, it's really, when I look at methodology, one thing I find out that how we can make a case to say it is God only. How can you know? Yeah, okay, I understand there must be someone, but then someone might be an alien, or might be a group of gods, or how can we know there has to be one single God? So his concept of juz'i, kulli, juz-kul, and it's really one of very interesting concept, and he apply everywhere. Wahid ahad. Even if you look at it, the way he mentioned particular attribute or name of God, it's very relevant to that particular argument. Like when he will say, look here, is this juice, that the small piece, is actually part of the entire, kul. So, and it's not only that, this juice is also juz'i, means this is a universal particle, that everything that you have in the entirety is actually embedded in this little piece. It means, when I read it mostly, it reminds me this new quantum entanglement theory that everything somehow is linked to everything else. When you read Nusi, it's very clear, rather than departmentalizing and separating these things from each other to focus on the piece, you always link the part to the whole and say the part cannot exist and function without the whole. So, and that is really wahidiyah. It is the unity of the creation is one of essential concept that he used, and he tried to make sure that, okay, you're talking about the eyes, but don't forget the sun. You're talking about the sun, don't forget about the solar system. You talk about the solar system, don't forget about the galactical system. Oh, and you talk about that, don't forget about the subatomic system. They're all linked together. They all are just piece of the same unity. Now, as long as you see the unity, then he will conclude the one who creates one piece within this unity must be the creator of the entire universe. And I think this argument is very relevant in modern time, particularly in quantum physics, particularly, that now we reach to the level that we know at subatomic level, everything is connected to everything else. You cannot separate anything from anything else. So in the sense that you can see complete unity at the subatomic level among the entire creation in the universe, particularly this theory of entanglement. It's very, very interesting to really give this idea of how everything is connected. Now, and that's, once you see such connection, then you say, okay, that this must be the work of one that who has the power over everything. And I think that's really, this point is also very, 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 because I used to think that ahadiyya is important, but we don't really understand why ahadiyya is as much as important as ahadiyya. Therefore, I realized that Bruce, when he used it, we said wahid ahad together, that it seems like, yes, you can point to the uniqueness of a part, but you have to always think the part with the whole. Otherwise, Nursi will say that you might be misguided towards ascribing this to the cause or to the nature, or to say this might happen just by chance. But once you see this connection, then there is no logical way to say that it can happen in any way but, through the work of God.
Maybe if there's time, can we return about that topic? Also, you and Fatih also mentioned about what is the importance of the reading Tabir Salisi for believers? If you like that, maybe you can just tell something about it. What's the importance of reading? Why we need to read again and again Tabir Salisi and also like this type of books about it?
We basically say that we believe Allah, so
Yeah.
why we are
That's okay. Why we need about it? And maybe someone tells something. Yeah, let's start. For example, let me start point maybe that one. That in Quran also Allah says a lot of times La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah, and also ordered us that we in Layl Ibadah several times we make tasbihah with La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, and also there's maybe same question about why we tell again, okay, then I talked before, La ilaha illallah. Why today I have to tell 1,000 times again or the 100 times again? Maybe this similar issue these 2 points. Yeah. Fatih, maybe you can explain. You mentioned it first. The effect of Tabet Sari to believers. Can you open a little bit more about it?
There's another part in letters. There's a hadith. جددوا إيمانكم بلا إله إلا الله. Renew your faith with La ilaha illallah. Like as much as we can, we should do that. And the reason for that is the universe is changing all the time, and our feelings, understandings change all the time too. So, like I am not who I was yesterday, and tomorrow I will be a different person. And the universe is the same too. The weather is different from yesterday, or lots of things change every day. So we need to see La ilaha illallah in all the different universes, and we need to say La ilaha illallah with all different personalities that we go through. Even during the day, we wake up in the morning, we have different feelings. Afternoon, we have some different, and like at night, we go into another like bubble universe of ours. So we need La ilaha illallah to eliminate all those universes. Yeah, universes.
Let me read something about this. I think this relates very closely to what you were saying about striking and getting water out of each and everything, or that's obviously my analogy. The reality of it is that to have a way to know God from each and everything. Right? So in the 22nd word, Bediüzzaman, there's a text elsewhere too, but here too. So the affirmation of divine unity, this tawhid, monotheism, is of 2 sorts, 2 ways. For example, if the goods of a rich man arrive in a market or a town, there are 2 ways in which one may know that they are his. So imagine there's a marketplace, a city in the middle of the city, there's a marketplace, and a huge amount of merchandise came to that marketplace, there are two ways to know that this entire merchandise belongs to one particular merchant. Right? One is briefly and simply, as with ordinary people, which is to say, no one apart from him, this merchant, is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. But when under the supervision of a common man, an ordinary man who doesn't have sophisticated thinking, such as that, much of it may be stolen. So the merchandise came, it's not, you put this man without sophisticated thinking to guard the merchandise, and a thief came and said, look, I understand, this cannot be anybody else's, the whole thing cannot be anybody else's, but there's this little pen here, this has mixed up into it. Yeah, that's mine. The whole, I don't deny it, it's his, but this small pen, see, this was when I just dropped it here yesterday while walking through it, it is mine. And if the guard is not sophisticated, he's going to say, okay, take it, you may be convinced. Many others may claim ownership of the parts of it. The second sort is this. Through reading the merchant's writing on every packet, recognizing his signature on every roll, and seeing his seal on every bill, the man declares, everything, each and everything, belongs to that person, that merchant. Here, everything in effect shows the important man. Right? So the thief came, said, this pen is mine. The guard pulled it out and said, look, his name is written on it. There's the seal. It's not the historical fact. Similarly, the affirmation of divine unity, monotheism, is of two sorts. One is the superficial and common affirmation of divine unity, which says, Almighty God is one, He has no partner or like, this universe is His. This universe is His. Right? And there's nothing wrong with it, it's okay, it's monotheism. If somebody who says is a believer, right? No problem. But it's dangerous, it's precarious. I believe that there's no God but Allah, everything is His, and then I get sick, I take the medicine, and I say, let me take this medicine, I will get, well. So is the healing? Is the healing in the medicine, or am I able to see God behind the medicine? Am I able to see the healer in the medicine? Yeah. The second is the true affirmation of divine unity, monotheism, or true is not the right translation here, is elsewhere affirmative or analytical, i.e. you come to this conclusion after exploring the subject, right? Let's say affirmative. In this, the second is the affirmative affirmation of divine unity or affirmative monotheism, which through seeing on everything the stamp of His power, the seal of His lordship, rububiyyah, and the inscription of His pen, is to open a window directly onto His light from everything, and to confirm and believe with almost the certainty of seeing it, that everything emerges from the hand of His power, and that in no way has He any partner or assistant in His divinity, or in His rububiyyah, lordship, or in His sovereignty, hakimiyyah. And thus, to attain to a sort of perpetual awareness, perpetual is the important part, perpetual, continuous awareness of the divine presence. The nafs is the thief, the Satan is the thief. It will keep coming to us while we are in a state of heedlessness, while we are sleeping, while we are not thinking, while we are busy with other things. It will keep coming and bothering and bothering and bothering, and each time he steals something from us, we are losing a part of our iman. And we have no guarantee that we are not going to, die at that moment. So we need to, as Ali also said, we need to renew our faith continuously. We need to teach this to our nafs. And through our nafs, make the Satan, the Prophet ﷺ, have convinced the Satan. Maybe
And I have also like I think the iman is getting older or perishing, like weaker or and old eskimek bilmiyorum zayıflamak ama eskimek tabii daha getting older and also like clothes and as you told I think how it's getting older or they becoming perish because sometimes we know that the first everything is under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay. But then I go out and in the cold weather I become ill, and I thought that the cold weather makes me ill.
Causes.
Yani. But just 2 minutes ago, you are talking about everything is under control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you are talking about that something else affected you directly. And then you take like the medicine, and they get okay, then they getting healthy. Then you are talking about that okay, healer is that medicine. And I think in this type of events that we experience can affect our iman, then we need to read again and renew point of view to the events again from the Risale-i Nur also.
I think another point is, I mean, most of us in our daily life, we are faced with these signs in our job or schools, whatever. So most of the signs are like secular. I mean, shows us the secular point of view. So even if we don't believe, our iman is getting bigger because of those lines. It's like basically, yeah, like it's giving you some doubt about it. Even if you don't accept it, they are coming into your mind. So they have some, like, Ustaz says that every sin is puts your doubt in your heart. It's like every idea, like a dot in your brain. If we didn't wash our brain every time with La ilaha illallah, the dot is getting bigger and bigger, and then maybe sometimes we have more doubt and that, and nobody become non-believer right away. It took some time, right? So every time we need to wash our brain and we need to renew our iman.
I think that I would say is not only the renewal. It is. I agree that the Muslim minds are colonized by the secular ideology. So in a sense, that's really what is the running behind of our mind is basically a secular way of looking at events into the universe. So Nursi is basically rebuilding the mind of believers and saying that you need to really rebuild your way of looking. That's Nazar, when he says Nazar is basically saying that you need to gain a new way of looking at life, looking at the events. You need to wear new glasses, the glasses that you have, showing you the different things. So therefore, his point is entire struggle in life to really see how he can rebuild the mind of believers based on the teaching of Quran. And I think there are many concepts if we truly examine our life that it comes straight from the secular teaching and secular education, and we're not even aware of that. I would like to give you examples. It's a really funny one that everyone uses it very well. So in Turkish you say doğal gas, in English you say natural gas. So what's natural gas? How the nature thinks that the needs of humanity and evolution in the 21st century and come up with some very, very efficient fuels to meet the needs is, but when you say natural gas, it does not remind you, give you any signal. But I heard that Iranian call the natural gas to be Rahmani gas. They say Rahmani gas. To me, this is actually much better way to describe this one. If you look at some mercy, that makes something like this and to give. But you see that the very wording, and actually Arabic is much really strong language in this regard. And the wording of the thing itself really makes you to remember God. Like when you say Ni'mah, it reminds you of Ilm. When you say Rizq, it reminds you of Razaq. When you say Ikram, it reminds you of Kareem. When you say Shifa, it reminds you of Shafi. So many things like this, they directly remind you of God. While the secular language, like in Turkish, Yemek reminds you the act of eating, nothing else. There's no meaning behind that one. So there's no Ni'mah there. You don't say there's no. So the language is becoming very secular intentionally, is really making sure that it does not really lead you to the real meaning behind that. So in this regard, really Nursi's efforts try to see how he can really bring a new language, a new way of seeing, a new way of looking at life. And I find out this is an extremely important, that if we really forget the idea, if we start to see how we can change our way of looking at things. Therefore, when he says Nazar, if you really look at it in my study, when he mentioned that it took 40 years of his life and 30 years of education to come up with 4 words, Nazar, Niya, Ma'nai, Hati, Ma'nai, Ismi, it's basically, it's Nazar is against the viewpoints or perspective. Niya is intention, Ma'nai, Ismi, Ma'nai, Hati is basically as معناه اسمي, the translation is a sub-indicative. معناها is the other indicatives, or in religious systems, God indicatives. That's when you look at something that points to God rather than itself. So, but when you look at it, his the definition of معناه and معناه اسمي is also defining the viewpoint. That's the worldview. That's nazar. So he will say معناه حرفي nazarı means that the معناه حرفي or معناه اسمي is the one that's really shaping your worldview. That's how you look at everything through this class or this prism. So therefore, I kind of feel that really this is not for non-believers only. This is really is as valuable for believers as much as for non-believers, because we all are somehow affected and shaped by this secular ideology through the secular education. So I think therefore it's very, very important that we try to really understand those concepts and try to see how we can, again, correct our way of looking at things and our way of expressing. Because the language is really not. It's not just what we can say natural means of communication. Every language is loaded with certain worldview and ideology. So when you use the secular language, and again when I look particularly Arabic, it's very clear it's loaded with this Tawhidi perspective. That's really, if you use this concept, and it's somehow, even if you don't want to remember, it always remind you about, the maker behind those events. So therefore, I think it's really, this is very, very important for everyone.
Shall we continue further, inshallah?
Yeah,
And